It's August 12th, Wednesday, a quick Bible study day. When we read the scriptures, we the scriptures basically are stories about God. And so how we understand God has a lot to do with the way we understand the scriptures. I'm going to just tell you a quick story. After Adam and Eve had messed up, and for whatever reason, it's not described fully, but because of what they did, God put them out of the Garden of Eden. Now, since I believe that God is loving and kind, his justice is perfect, his compassion and mercy are his greatest attributes, and that he is always interested in the well-being of the human being, the creature that he created in his own image, and that he breathed his own breath into, and that he said that they were very good, and he put them in the garden. So when I read that Adam and Eve, regardless of how the story is played out, when I read that Adam and Eve were thrown out of the garden, because I believe God is loving and just, well, my first thought is, I don't know what they did, but whatever they did, it must have been pretty bad if God threw them out of the garden, meaning there had to be a just reason for that. So the way I understand who God is shapes the way I read that story. Now, if you think God is mean and vindictive and retaliatory and malicious and all this, which I have run into a handful of people through the years that just think God is terrible, well, then you read the story different. See, the way I read the story, God is the hero who, in the end, rescues Adam and Eve. So when I read this story about Adam and Eve being thrown out of the garden, the only way I understand it is that happened because that was the best thing for Adam and Eve. Now think about that. If God really does care about what happens to us, everything he does in the end will be the best thing for us. So if God cast Adam and Eve out of the garden, it's because that was the best thing. It wasn't because God got mad. And again, I have said this over and over. God could have destroyed Adam and Eve and just made new ones. But God didn't. And I think that reinforces some special connection between the Almighty and the human being, Adam and Eve. So now they're out of the garden, okay? The story begins in Genesis chapter 4, where Adam and Eve now have kids. And Cain and Abel are the two that are primary in this story. So Abel works among the herd animals, sheep, goats, whatever. Cain works the land, grain, and other crops. And I'm sure that some of those crops were actually used, the fodder even was used to feed the animals. So there was probably a connection there. But anyway, the way the story goes, the community or the family, back at that point, we're probably still just going to refer to it as a family, which Jesus even refers to all of us believers as being his family. So family is an important community structure there. So in that family, they want to honor God, which is kind of strange. If you want to say God is mean and vindictive and had no right to throw them out of the Garden of Eden, it just seems strange they would build an altar after they get thrown out of the garden and want to offer respects to God through various types of offerings. But anyway, the family had decided that they would need to offer offerings to God as a way to honor God. So they build an altar. And the altar then becomes a designated place that you bring your special offering. And the offering is always going to be the best. So Abel brings the best lamb that he has, the finest, most choice lamb. It says even, and burns the fatted portion. It's sort of like the most choicey piece of that lamb that the people could eat. Of course, that would then be what you would offer to God, as to honor God. You would offer God the best possible part of what God had provided you. So he offers the fatted portions of the lamb. Cain, he shows up with grain, wheat or barley, and he's going to offer that. But the way the story goes, God tells Cain, "Well, no, that's not the offering that I want. The offering that Abel brought is the one that I want." Now, when we say God tells Cain this and God tells Abel this, the family has probably concluded together that to honor and respect the God that they worship, we will have an altar and we will offer certain things. For example, you would not burn dung to honor your God. And you would not burn things that smell bad. You would offer things that have a pleasing aroma, so that as the smoke goes up and as you offer this to God, it's not just the value of what you're burning, like something is valuable. It's also when you burn it, it is a pleasing odor, a pleasing smell to God. The grain that Cain was bringing, depending on how much grain he was bringing, that grain could have been monetarily worth more money or currency than the lamb that Abel offered. So it's not a matter of one could have been more valuable in monetary terms over the other. If you begin to think about it, if you're wanting to offer something up to God, to honor God, think about the difference between the smell of burning the choicey parts of that lamb. You and I have all barbecued and cooked out and stuff. We know how good all that smells. And then compare that to the smell of burning grain. You and I have probably burnt bread or burnt other things similar to grain or burnt flour. There's no comparison. You think about the family now, Adam and Eve's family, they're going to want to honor God. Which one, even in their own mind, as they're trying to understand how to make God, respected, which one would be the one? You would want the one that smells the best. You would want the one. Matter of fact, if you think about it, even the oil that comes out of the fatted parts of the lamb even help the fire burn. I mean, it's just from a utilitarian and practical point of view. Now, this is beside the whole theology of the blood, okay? The blood being the life of the lamb, and therefore when you slaughter the lamb, which the term altar kind of means the official slaughter site, theologically, the blood represents life, and life being the most valuable thing that we have, you're offering the most valuable gift to God to honor God. Okay, but put that aside. That's theological part of it. But also just think from a practical point of view, which one in your mind would appear to be more pleasing to offer to your God. So God reveals, or the family basically reveals to Cain, that God has said Cain's offering is not the right one. It doesn't say Cain can't make an offering. It doesn't say Cain can't come up here and do that. What he's just saying is what Cain has brought, the grain, is not what we're going to use. So Cain could have taken the grain, traded it to Abel for the right offering. So it's not, Cain is not cast out at this point yet. He's just told, said, well, no, the way we're going to do it, the way we think is going to be the most honorable to God, is we're going to offer this type of offering. So instead of Cain wanting to cooperate with the family, cooperate with the community of faith who have come up with a plan on how to show the most respect to God, it appears Cain gets upset. Now we're going to start with chapter 4, verse 6. And this is where my understanding of God shapes how I read this. All right. 4:6. Well, the Lord said to Cain, why are you angry? And why has your countenance fallen? And then here's a question God asks. Cain, if you do well, will you not be accepted? Now think for a minute there now. Basically what God is saying is, Cain, I'm not saying you're not worthy to come bring the offering. And at this point, if we sort of understand that it might be God speaking through this family, this community of faith that is working together to try to understand how they're supposed to live in gratitude for all that God has provided for them. Okay, in a way, it's almost like maybe even the family saying to Cain, Cain, if you just do what we have set up here, won't you just be included like the rest of us? So, I mean, think about that. If you believe God is kind and just and honorable, he's going to say to Cain, well, look, Cain, it's not you. It's not you that is not worthy to come to the altar. The way it's set up right now, we're not doing the grain. So if you will use your grain to buy what the community of faith or what I have asked your family to do, or what, if you'll use that and just fall in line with the way that we're trying to inspire each other, so, well, won't you be accepted just like everyone else? Well, that's a kind and loving God that says that. Now, if you think God is mean, you're going to already begin to see where God's throwing Cain out. Well, he's not throwing Cain out. He's just throwing out the use of the grain as the offering. Again, we're back to the theology of the blood and everything. But what I'm saying is, he's not throwing Cain out. For Cain offered the wrong thing, and he just advises Cain and says, look, that's not what we're going to use. You go ahead and get what we've got set up here, and you come on back, and no problem. So then he says, if you do well, will you not be accepted? And he says, and if you do not do well, sin is lurking at the door. Its desire is to have you, but you must master it. Now, again, since I believe God is loving and kind and is trying to do what's best for us, he's saying to Cain, if you don't do well, if you don't do what I have required or the family of faith has put together as their way that they're going to show honor and respect and gratitude. I mean, if you think about it, it's a community. It's not a bunch of individuals. They're a family that are trying to follow the commandments of God here. If you do not do what is required, he doesn't say you're no good. He says sin is going to use that as an opportunity. Sin is waiting at your door, which sort of gives us kind of an echo of what happened in the garden. It wasn't Adam and Eve that were rejected. What was rejected was their willingness to entertain sin and to practice sin. So what God is saying to Cain is, Cain, be careful now. Be careful, really. Fall in line with what we've got set up here, because this is the best arrangement. This is the best way to teach you. This is the best way to inspire you. This is the best way to help you humans understand how you must proceed and how you must grow and how you must be my people. Sin is at the door waiting for you. But he says to Cain, you must master it. If he tells Cain, you must master it, is mastering sin available to Cain? What kind of God would say you must do this, but there's no option for you to do it? When we read that God says to Cain, you must master sin, basically what we're reading is God is saying, if you will fall in line, if you will participate in the way the community is set up, the way I have designed this family of God to operate, if you will fall in line with that, you will master sin. Sin will not be able to overcome you. It's not you, Cain, but you have to fall in line with how I have this set up, because I want to do what's best for you, and I'm giving you advice, inspiration, and I'm making you promises, but you have to follow me, because you're actually on your own. You're going to have some trouble, and sin is going to be able to take over and take care of you. Here is the saddest part of this whole story. And the way I understand God shapes how I read this, but the way I understand human beings shapes the way I read this. We go a little bit further, and we find the story. Cain gets mad, and then instead of cooperating with Abel and exchanging his grain to Abel for the appropriate offering and whatever, he gets jealous and mad, and he kills Abel. Now, when I read this, you know what I hear going on in Cain's mind? Oh yeah, God, you want a blood offering? I'll give you some blood. How about if I kill Abel? Now you tell me, in this story, who is the kind, loving, steadfast inspiration, and who is the malicious, retaliatory, and evil one? I want you to tell me that. I want you to look at this story and tell me that God is not the loving one, and us human beings aren't the vindictive and malicious ones. The way we understand God and the way we understand ourselves has a lot to do with the way we read the scriptures. I read the scriptures as there are times in my life when I'm like Cain and I don't want to do what God wants. But I believe in my heart that what God wants for me is the best for me. Regardless of what happens, that has been an anchor in my life since I don't know of any time, even in early teenage years, I believed, even though I wouldn't always obey, but I did believe that God always wanted the best for me. And whatever he was asking me to do was not out of judgment and was not out of some kind of desire to prove how powerful he was. Whatever God was asking of me was always going to be the best for me. The way we understand who God is and the way we understand who we are shapes the way we read this Bible. If we don't get that right, we're never going to get the Bible right. God is the hero. At best, we're the one that needs to be rescued, And at worst, we're the one who interferes with the rescue plan God has. I'll see you in church Sunday.